It's great to have you here for this little video case study. So do you want to just explain to everybody who you are and what role and organisation you're from?
Yep, so I'm Alex Legovel. I'm the East Midlands Club Support Officer for England Boxing. So I look after all of the affiliated boxing clubs in Northamptonshire, Leicestershire, Notts, Lincs and Derbyshire, and also a little bit of the home counties, so Bedfordshire and Milton Keynes. I'm based in Northampton myself, so I know the clubs down here particularly well. But yeah, just my job's really twofold, really, to get more people participating in boxing, whether that's better facilities, more people just engaging with the sport, more coaches, everything like that. And secondly, and I think more importantly, it's about sustainability. So creating more sustainable clubs. So, making sure that our clubs are not just thriving now, but also thriving in the future. And I think that's more important than ever right now with everything going on with the pandemic.
Give us a bit of a background to the club that we're going to talk about today. Who are they? Where are they?
So the club I'm going to talk about today are Epic Golden Gloves, who are from Newark in Nottinghamshire, Newark and Sherwood. They're actually run by a former professional boxer called Isham Pickering. So very interesting guy to meet because he trained under Brendan Ingle, who is a bit of a legend of the boxing world. So yeah, when you meet Isham, he's very much, he used to train with Prince Nassim Hamid and Johnny Nelson and all these guys in the Ingle gym. So it's a very interesting guy to speak to, and he's got very interesting philosophies on boxing. So what he's looking to do really is carry on the tradition that Brendan Ingle embedded within him in Winkerbank and do that in Newark, which is really exciting. So yeah, when I first met the club, they hadn't really engaged. I've worked for England Boxing now for about 2.5 years, and they got in touch with me maybe about 18 months ago. So started that sort of development process then, as a club that very much probably weren't doing much in their local community, weren't really engaging. They were actually didn't have a constitution. Governance was minimal, and they were looking to really develop and engage better with their community, look at funding and begin that whole process of club development. So that's when I met them.
Yeah, so pause it. So how did you engage with them? How did that relationship start?
So it was actually indirect. So there's a guy on the committee called Tim Johnston, who contacted Active Knots. So he got in touch with Edwina Archer from Active Knots, and Edwina then contacted me to say that the club had been in touch regarding funding and beginning that process. So then the wheels were set in motion. Edwina put us in touch. I then arranged a meeting with the club, and we also engaged with Will Hughes, who's the place lead for Newark and Sherwood from Active Partners Trust or Active Knots. And yeah, that's kind of how everything began.
So engaging with and through other stakeholders, yes, was quite key in that example.
100%, and the whole process has been very collaborative between England Boxing and Active Knots. When we attend meetings, it'll be myself and Will that go to meetings with the club. He's the place lead for that area, and he's got specific focus on Newark and Sherwood. And obviously, I provide the more specific boxing expertise from the NGB perspective. But yeah, it's been a really good collaborative working process with other partners.
Okay, and how did you develop a supportive and effective relationship with the club from that moment of that first meeting to where you are now?
So I think it's as simple as communication. I think everything with anything in life, I think communication is the most important thing. So when you first meet anybody, I think it's about finding a common ground. So very, very simple with someone like Isham. I'm a fan of boxing, so I wanted to speak to him about his career in boxing. So, it's people don't think a meeting doesn't always have to be really, really, I don't know, very serious at all times, or, you can have a laugh with people, you can get to know them on another level. And I think with Isham and Tim and the guys up there, that was very easy to do because, to be honest with you, I was fascinated to know what his experiences under Brendan Ingle as a start, as a fan of the sport and as someone that's passionate about the sport. So it kind of begun that way. And then from there, as we begin talking about, Isham's telling me about how much he loved, the impact in the community in Sheffield and what it did and how he wants to do that in Newark. I've obviously done a lot of that work across the East Midlands with other clubs, and I can then say, well, this is what Brendan Ingle did. We can now do this, and these are the processes we need to do to get there. So it's building that rapport with the club and finding common ground and yeah, you know, just building trust in that way.
It's really interesting when you talk about that relationship building and rapport building with the club, and a few key things you talk about there, things like, you know, a shared common ground and passion around the sport, but you also talk about offering solutions and sharing ideas. Do you think that really helped to kind of take that relationship forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think from my perspective, the work that I've done with other clubs across the region, there's so much good practice to be shared. So not only do you build the relationship with the club on various different levels in terms of those common interests, but then also when you share the information that you have gathered from working with other clubs through other experiences or other fantastic projects that you can kind of draw similarities out of, then you know that people, when you go to a club and you say, oh, I've done this amazing project just down the road in Nottingham with mental health, or we've done some work with knife crime, or whatever it is, whatever the project is, people kind of react and go, oh yeah, no, I want to do that, and they trust you because you've got this kind of track record of doing this with other people. Then they begin to sort of trust your judgment on how to build these relationships and move forward.
Great to hear how you've built that relationship and how you work in a collaborative fashion with the active partnerships and local authorities as well around that. So tell us about what that support has consisted of and how the club's developed over time.
Right, so a lot of it, as I kind of alluded to at the start of our conversation, I'm based at the most southern point of my region in Northampton, so naturally I'm going to know the area that I live in a little bit better than some of the others. So where for me particularly in my region, some of the further stretches out towards Grimsby and Cleethorpes or Glossop up in North Derbyshire, you know, they're 2.5-3 hours away. So I heavily rely on local stakeholders, active partnerships, and whoever it may be, they're my eyes and ears on the ground, and they have the local connections. So for me, with this particular project, Will, Jade, Edwina, John, everyone at the Active Partners Trust have been absolutely invaluable in helping me understand the local area. I mean, one thing that's very particular with Newark is there's quite a high population of people from the travelling community. So a lot of the work we've done has been engaging the travelling community within the boxing club. Obviously, there's a lot of young boxers, particularly in amateur boxing, are from the travelling community, but it's particularly noticeable in Newark. And a lot of the work that we've been doing is kind of, you know, connecting, community cohesion, bringing people together from all different demographics, and that's largely what it's consisted of.
So I'm very aware, Alex, of that project and how you worked with partners and how you've been needs less about the community and engaging communities, particularly from a travelling background, as you've told us. So tell me some of the club development processes that you've gone through and how easy those have been to put in place with the club.
So the major thing that we did was we encouraged the club to basically write their own development plan. So they began that process, and I provided different templates that I've worked with other boxing clubs. I also use one that I used with a swimming club in a previous role. So totally different, but just a really good example of a club development plan. And you know, it's got very, you know, they did a SWOT analysis. They've done all the kind of processes you need to work out where are we right now and where do we want to be. And what the club have done is they've kind of used this as a working document. So every time we meet up, they'll come to the meeting and they'll have printed off the latest copy of the development plan. We'll go through it, and that forms the agenda for the meeting. And that's kind of where they've seen the progress, and then set their actions and their objectives moving forward. For example, one thing that they were really looking to do was to engage better with the local community, you know, become a bit of a community hub and do some outreach work, and, you know, get better known basically within the community. So what they did is they went to an outreach event at Newark Castle in the summer. It must have been summer 2019. And what they did is they actually hired some virtual reality equipment. So they set up a ring and they use virtual reality boxing equipment, which I thought was really quite interesting. I had no idea what to expect. Yeah, They engage with loads of local people from all different backgrounds, and they gave out vouchers to come down to the club and just encouraging new people into the club. And I thought that was a really interesting way of going about things. So that's just one example of what they've done. But they've engaged with the police, the local district council, you name it. They're kind of working with people.
Great club, and I'm very typical Alex, talking about how amazing the club is, and the fact that, you know, it's interesting to know about how you've been able to build rapport and do a development process, because I think that you said at the beginning of this where they didn't really have a constitution and hadn't really engaged with England boxing before. It's quite a big journey, isn't it, maybe from where they were to where they are now. What do you think's been the critical success factor to getting them to where they are now?
It's we've been very fortunate because the club have managed to get very, very good. The key with any club is having the right people always, and we've been very fortunate with this project. From a development side, for me, I've got people in the same way they need to trust in me. I need to trust in them that they're going to go away and do the work. So when I go to a meeting and I give them all these actions and I say you need to do this, this, and this to get to here, this club have got people that have done that, which is fantastic, and that's not always the case. So again, yeah, maybe I'm sort of saying that the club are doing a fantastic job and taking it away from me, but and myself and Will as well have been fantastic from the Active Partners Trust in terms of, you know, if they've ever had any questions, they come to both Will and I, and we'll go back to them with our thoughts on things. You know, if the club have now done a lot of work on different funding applications, and they'll send them across to us, and we'll read through. You know, we'll add our own comments on how we think they should be improved, or, you know, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, they've very much taken on board my philosophy, which is, I can write a bid for a club, and that's fantastic. You know, I can do that, and we can get funding and everything. But actually, what are the club learning by doing that? So, you know, the key for us as England Boxing is we want our clubs to survive, particularly right now. We want them to thrive as well. But you know, they need to be able to look after themselves and be sustainable. So hand-holding's fine, but actually, you know, there's a learning process, and I think the key is the learning in any project. And this is a really good example of a club that's learned and a lot more sustainable than when I first met them.